Hello and welcome everyone. So this video will be on abortion, quick summary of the Abortion Act and the new NICE guideline on abortion care. Hope it's useful for you. Let's start. So the Abortion Act is about what are the clauses that are there for abortion, and it also tells about the requirements, the legal facts that are required while performing an abortion, right? So the abortion procedures, and that is why it's important to know about this act. So there are two registered medical practitioners that are required for the abortion, and an abortion can take place only if these two medical practitioners are of the opinion that an abortion is justified within the terms of that. Within the terms of the Abortion Act, only a registered medical practitioner can terminate a pregnancy. So at least two should opine that yes, this patient can undergo an abortion, and after that, only if there is one RMP, one registered medical practitioner, that one can go for the termination completely, right? So there is a difference. Two are required for the opinion and one is required for doing the procedure. So one is also enough for doing the procedure. The notification form must be completed by the doctor taking responsibility for the procedure. In practice, a nurse or a midwife may administer the drug used for medical abortion once these have been prescribed by the doctor. That means the notification has to be filled by the doctor, and the prescription should be given by the doctor. Later on, the administration of the drugs, the monitoring can be done by the nurses and the staff, but the prescription has to be of the doctor. The Abortion Act requires any treatment for the termination of pregnancy that must take place in an NHS hospital and approved premises. Okay. Treatment includes prescription and administration of both the drugs used for the two stages of medical abortion. Right? So that means giving the prescription as well as administering the drug. So this whole is called as treatment. This take place in NHS hospital or approved premises. Now the different forms of abortion, there are three of them. One of them is HSA1. Now this HSA1 form is given by two doctors, and this is a regular form. So two doctors are required to sign HSA1 form, which is a certificate of opinion before an abortion is performed. HSA1 form must be kept for 3 years. So for a regular abortion, an abortion elective one, HSA1 form is given. HSA2 form is to be completed by the doctor within 24 hours of an emergency abortion. So remember, for an emergency abortion, then there is HSA2 form that needs to be filled in. Even this form needs to be kept for 3 years. HSA4 form. This one is to be sent to the CMO, right? And it is basically as a documentation with the CMO for making the registry of how many abortions have happened in the area, or maybe for the sake of statistics, right? So this is basically given to the CMO. It is either filled manually or electronically within 14 days of abortion taking place, right? So only the doctors terminating the pregnancy are able to authorize the electronic form. But and remember that there are three forms: HSA 1, the one that is given electively; HSA 2 is for emergency abortions; HSA 4 is the one that is given to the CMO. Now, this is where the questions are asked on. So basically, the grounds for termination of pregnancy. Let us make this a little big. So zoom in. So remember, there are different categories, and out of which A is basically for continuance of pregnancy when the continuance of pregnancy involves risk to the life of the pregnant woman greater than if the pregnancy were terminated. So basically, A is when the abortion is done, when if we continue the pregnancy, it will cause problems to the life of the mother, right? So in those cases wherever pregnancy is contraindicated, right? Like in cases of severe pulmonary hypertension cases, or uh, cases of history of uh, any surgery, cardiac surgeries, aortic surgeries, aortic dissection, or whatever for dilatation, aortic severe, whatever things that are we rule out and we say that pregnancy is contraindicated in these patients. Then, if we continue pregnancy, it is causing problems to the life of the mother. Then it is A. B is the termination is necessary to prevent the grave permanent injury to the physical or mental health of the pregnant woman. Okay, so for example, in cases where uh, it has happened out of rape, so that is going to cause a grave permanent injury. If the child is born, then that is going to remain with her, and it must have caused problems with her. It may cause problems with her mental health. It may be very grave sort of one, or it may cause some grave permanent injury to her physical health. So for example, if she is having any major medical problem and she continues with the pregnancy, and then has some problems with her health later on, may not be endangering the life, but of course causing permanent damage to her health, then it is necessary to terminate this under the clause B. C is the pregnancy has not exceeded its 24th week. Now remember, in A and B, there is no criteria of gestational age. This is where things get confused. So there is a difference between the above A and B and C and D, and the reason is in C and D, there is a difference by the gestational age too. So in C and D, you can only do up to 24 weeks, whereas in others, you can do at any point of time in pregnancy. So C is up till 24 weeks, and the continuation of pregnancy would involve risk greater than if the pregnancy were terminated of injury to the physical or mental health of a pregnant woman. So for example, the patient doesn't want to continue the pregnancy, she is financially overburdened, is not doesn't want to uh, be pregnant at this point of age in her life. So all these things, the regular ones, most of the times which comes to us, all these patients, they fall under this category C. Category D is when the pregnancy has not exceeded its 24th week, and this is causing problems to the physical and mental health of the existing children of the family of the pregnant woman. Okay, so remember, C is for the physical and mental health of the pregnant woman. D is for the physical and mental health of any existing children of the family of the pregnant woman. So, for example, the mother is really very poor and cannot take care of her two children already. So if there is a third one that is born, then it may cause hamper the development of the other two children, or any sort of thing that may put the children at risk. In the question, you have to write D as an answer. But remember, most of the times it is either C, or they may give you again a child which has got anomalies, severe anomalies, and a child, if born, will be severely handicapped. And in these cases, you may go for abortion for at any point of gestation under clause E. Okay. Now these are for the elective abortions. Now, in case where the abortion is performed in an emergency, right? And if a doctor is of the opinion, formed in good faith, that the termination is necessary for in emergency cases, whenever the termination of the pregnancy is necessary, the patient is bleeding a lot, and uh, then of course going for abortion, though the pregnancy might still be present there, but then going for an abortion is of course important in emergency cases, like in cases of in any case where the patient is very serious and you really require to do the abortion to save the patient, right? So F will stand for saving the life of the pregnant woman, and G will stand for preventing the grave permanent injury to the physical or mental health of the pregnant women. So this is whenever the patient feels that the doctor feels that if I don't do it now, it's really very important, it's really emergency to do it now, otherwise it will cause problem either to the life or may cause permanent injury to the physical or mental health of the pregnant woman. Then go for the emergency clauses, that is F and G, right? But just remember, because most of the times the questions are asked about A, C, E, and if at all they want to ask about F or G, they just ask F is done in. So you just need to know that it is done in emergency, right? Now, most of the abortions are taken on ground C, that the pregnancy has not exceeded its 24th week and that the continuance will involve the risk greater than if the pregnancy were terminated to the physical or mental health of the women. Now, the NHS GPs who have contracted to provide contraceptive services, who have a conscious objection to the abortion, must, where appropriate, refer the women promptly to another doctor. This is again a very important question that is asked, that if you are religiously bound being a doctor, or if your conscience doesn't allow you to ask to help a woman in abortion, then it's of course not you who is going to take decision for her, neither are you going to influence the patient to not go for an abortion. Your duty is just to refer the patient to another doctor, whoever is ready to help the patient to go for abortion, right? So this is again a very commonly asked question, because NHS is full of doctors of different parts of different parts of the world, having different opinions and different religions and their own faith, and that is why it's important to know what they want us to do with their patients, right? Now, confidentiality again is a very important thing, not only for abortion but for all the doctor-patient relation talks, or all the services that we provide for our patients. Confidentiality is again a very important part. But remember, all women seeking abortion have the right to confidentiality only in exceptional circumstances. So remember, there are some exceptions where the health, the safety or the welfare of a minor or the other person is at risk, right? So it should be, the confidentiality should be given importance only when the most important things are not at risk, like the health, the safety and the welfare, as well as the other person's life. All these things are of course important than confidentiality, right? So in those cases, you may breach the confidentiality and may disclose the information to the third party. But of course, this needs to be as minimum as possible, and this should be only the required information and only if required should be given, right? Then abortion services must providers must make women aware that the contents of HSA-4 form used to inform the CMO, that we saw that the electronic or the manual can be given to CMO, will be used for statistical purposes by the DH, that is Department of Health, and the data will be published but will be anonymized, right? Now about the disposal of the fetal tissue, that it's completely on the patient, how the patient wants the fetal tissue to be handled. So the fetal tissue must be treated with dignity and respect according to the local policies. Women should be made aware that the information on the disposable options is available. Any personal wishes expressed should be met wherever possible. And in general, abortion services will arrange for the fetal abortion, for the fetal material from late medical and surgical abortions to be incinerated. Some may choose to have abortions, choose to have a contract with the local crematoria or burial authorities for cremation or burial. So it is completely on you on how you want the tissue to be handled, to be taken care of, and how it needs to be disposed, right? But the women may decide completely, and the woman has all the right. Sometimes the women may just give the authority to the hospital also, that you take care of the fetal tissue, whatever it is. I don't mind in those cases. The hospital will take care as per the local policies, right? Now, you know that abortions that are carried out after 24 weeks, according to the other clauses than C and D, remember up to 24 weeks is only under C and D. After 24 weeks, whenever the abortion is carried out, it is called as, it is registered as stillbirth by law, right? And there is another guideline on IUFD and stillbirth, and you may read the legal aspects from there related to the handling and the disposal of the fetal tissue, right? Now, this is about the adults with capacity. Any adult woman that is over 18 years in England and Wales and 16 years in Scotland for consent must be, the consent must be valid. It must be voluntarily. You know all the aspects of consent, that is, it should be valid, it should be informed, right? So it should be completely informed, it should be valid, the person should have capacity to understand while giving the consent. So this is for the adults with capacity, right? For adults who are without capacity, then for a person who lacks capacity, as a person who is unable to make a decision for themselves because of the impairment or disturbance, then it does not matter if the impairment or disturbance is permanent or temporary. The whole thing will change and the mental capacity act takes place. What happens here is, for these patients who don't have capacity, involve the women as fully as possible in the decision, and uh, whatever decision she takes, it's okay, but you need to tell her, even whatever, at whatever level she understands, okay? Even if you feel she doesn't understand, you need to inform that this is all we are going to do, right? As far as possible, consider the woman's present, past wishes and feelings. See if there are any beliefs, any values, any other relevant factors. See whether the woman would be likely to consider if she were able to do so. As far as possible, consult other people if it is appropriate to do so, and take into account their views. as to what would be in the best interest of the women. So before going for abortion, just find out from the relatives, from her previous things, if she has written any uh, directive, if she has had any wishes, right? Any previously named by the women as someone to be consulted, anyone engaged in care or who is interested in the women's welfare, anyone having the lasting power of attorney, and any deputy appointed by the court of protection to make decisions on behalf of the women. So you need to take care of all these things for patients who don't have capacity, right? For decisions about serious medical treatment, where there is no one appropriate other than the paid staff, then the healthcare professionals are interested to instruct an independent mental capacity advocate. Okay, so that is for, so on behalf of the patient's wishes, finding out if there's anything that you are missing on before going for an abortion or taking decision for the patient, finding out if there is anything that the patient wanted, then after that take the decision whether you want to go for an abortion for this patient who doesn't have a capacity or not, right? Now, young people who are 16, 17 years age, they are capable of consenting if they are able to take care, understand, and represent themselves and uh, take proper decisions. Then, of course, they can take decision of abortion. If at all it is seen that they are not taking the decisions or decisions that are taken by them are actually can be life threatening, can cause serious damage to their health, then sometimes these decisions can be over written by the person with the parental responsibility or by the court in people who are aged 16 to 17 years of age. And less than 16 years of age, you know that the Fraser's competence is important. The Gillick's guidelines will, the Gillick's rules will apply. And of course, whenever things are not taken rightly, or wherever you feel that the children are not able to take the right decisions, their decisions can be overwritten by the parents or the guardian. Now, the commissioner should ensure that services meet the recommendations relating to. So, for B, you should see that contraception after the abortion is given, right? So, after you have done an abortion, to prevent a grave, permanent mental or physical injury to the patient, then give contraception because you don't want it to happen further, right? A and C, you give antibiotic prophylaxis, right? For B again, do STI screening. For basically STI screening or contraception is to be given for all of them, but for specifically C, that you inform the provision after the abortion, you counsel after abortion for these patients who are undergoing an elective abortion in under the clause C. So all these things basically are important to see. Basically, they are important for all of them, giving antibiotic prophylaxis, giving STI, right? Now, blood test for the initial assessment, understand that you need to have the blood group with screening for Rexall antibodies. The rhesus blood status must be known. The hemoglobin should be known. And if there are any hemoglobinopathies, that should be known. So that is the basic thing, the initial assessment. Remember, routine pre-abortion ultrasound scan is unnecessary. Okay. Ultrasound scanning must be available to all the services as it may be required as part of assessment. So it should be there at all the centers, but it's not necessary to do it for every patient, right? Ultrasound scanning should be provided in a setting and manner sensitive to a woman's situation. And of course, whenever you're doing an abortion without doing an ultrasound scan, you should be sure of the dates. You should be sure that the gestational age is according to what you are thinking it is. Okay, so the other things should uh, go with your clinical findings and all, right? Now, feticide should be performed before medical abortion after 21 plus 6 days to ensure that there is no risk of live birth, right? What is feticide? Feticide is the injection of digoxin or potassium chloride, which is injected into the fetus, or the injection of digoxin that is given into the amniotic cavity to stop the fetal heart before an abortion. And we do this so that in cases where they're delivering the baby with severe fetal anomaly, and we know that the baby is actually not going to survive, or the baby is going to have a severe problem later on after the delivery, it rather than delivering the baby, you may just go for feticide, right? So going ahead, this is from where the NICE guidelines start. So remember that there is something about waiting times that has been written in the NICE guideline, and that is ensure that there is minimal delay in the abortion process. Ideally, provide the assessment within 1 week of the request. Provide the abortion within 1 week of the assessment. Okay, so after giving the request, do assessment within 1 week. After you have assessed, do the abortion within next 1 week. So within 15 days of the abortion request, the abortion should be over. Okay, so for women who would prefer to wait longer for an abortion, help them to make informed decision. Let them understand that if they continue the pregnancy, then the abortion is going to be a little difficult. It will increase the risk of complications, right? Do not require women to have compulsory counseling or compulsory time of reflection before the abortion. Of course, don't force them, but give them information, right? And support them in their decision. Now, important thing about anti-D is that you know that for uh, after 10 weeks, we have to offer anti-D prophylaxis to women who are Rh negative and are having an abortion after 10 weeks, right? Before 10 weeks, do not offer anti-D prophylaxis to women who are having a medical abortion up to or including 10 weeks. So up to 10 weeks, medical abortion, no need of anti-D. For surgical abortion, you may consider up to 10 weeks. For surgical abortion, you may consider anti-D up to 10 weeks, right? And just remember that the providers should ensure that the resuscitation status testing and anti-D prophylaxis supply does not cause any delay to the women having an abortion, because you should keep it ready, right? And anti-D prophylaxis is available at the time of the abortion. So now remember, after 10 weeks, only anti-D is required. If there is medical abortion up to 10 weeks, no need. You may consider if you're doing surgical abortion up to 10 weeks. Now, to prevent infection, antibiotic prophylaxis is not given routinely. So, do not routinely offer antibiotic prophylaxis who are having medical abortion. Okay, offer antibiotic prophylaxis only to women who are having surgical abortion. Of course, for medical abortion, you may offer, but you need not offer it routinely. So, it is not given all the time. Okay. For surgical abortion, of course, it is offered every time. You may use doxycycline for antibiotic prophylaxis in medical or surgical abortion. If you're using that, consider oral doxy 100 milligrams twice a day for 3 days. When you're using metronidazole for antibiotic prophylaxis, do not routinely offer it in combination with other broad spectrum antibiotics such as doxy. So do not give doxymetro together. Give either doxy, give either metro. Now for case of VTE, now if for women who need pharmacological thromboprophylaxis after reading that chart and finding out what the score is, right? So if the patient requires thromboprophylaxis, then give her LMWH for at least 7 days after the abortion. 7 days. Okay. For women who are at risk of thrombosis, consider starting LMWH before the abortion, and then you may give it for longer afterwards, of course, with the help of the physician. Offer the choice between medical and surgical abortion up to and including 23 plus 6 weeks of gestation. And if any method would not be clinically appropriate, explain why it is not appropriate. So these are the important things from VT. Just remember, Whenever pharmacological thromboprofile prophylaxis is required, give LMWH at least 7 days after the abortion. After an abortion, give 7 days LMWH along with the other things like mobilization and all, right? Now, remember, expulsion at home for medical abortion up to and including 10 weeks. So up to 10 weeks, you may give, you may ask the patient to go for expulsion. Okay. So if there is expulsion at home, right? So that is allowed. So up to and including 9 plus 6 weeks, and another one is at 10 weeks. Okay. So up to or including 9 plus 6 weeks for women who are having medical abortion and will be taking the mifepristone up to and including 9 plus 6 weeks, offer the option of expulsion at home after they have taken misoprostol. Misoprostol can be taken at home or in the clinic or in the hospital. So they may go home and expel at home also, but they need to take misoprostol, and misoprostol can be taken at any of the places. It can be taken at home, at clinic, at hospital. But there is a difference when you do a medical abortion at 10 weeks. So for women who are having a medical abortion and will be taking mifepristone at 10 weeks, offer the option of expulsion at home after they have taken misoprostol. And remember, there is no home here. It needs to be taken either in the clinic or in the hospital. So up to 10 weeks, so up to 9 plus 6 weeks, misoprostol can be taken anywhere. At 10 weeks, misoprostol needs to be taken only in the clinic or in the hospital, but expulsion at home is possible. Medical abortion up to and including 10 plus weeks. Now, from 10 plus weeks, offer the interval treatment, usually 24 to 48 hours, with Mifi and Meso to women who are having a medical abortion up to including 10 weeks, right? So for women who are having medical abortion up to and including 10 weeks, give them a choice of having Mifi and vaginal meso at the same time. So they may have Mifi and meso at the same time, right? Up to and including 9 weeks. But explain that the risk of ongoing pregnancy may be higher and it may increase the risk of gestation. It may take longer for bleeding. The pain may start. So basically, it is not recommended, but they may still take Mifi and meso together. Mifi orally, of course, and meso vaginally up to 9 weeks. Okay. Medical abortion between 10 to 10 plus 1 to 23 plus 6 weeks. For these patients, remember, you can give 200 milligrams of Mifi. Then, after 36 to 48 hours of interval, give meso, right? So, offer the initial dose of meso as 800 micrograms vaginally, right? Or 600 micrograms of meso if it is given sublingually, and then give every 3 hourly 400 micrograms. So 800 if it is given vaginally, 600 if it is given sublingually, and then every 3 hourly give 400 micrograms until the patient expels the products of conception. Use a shorter interval between the Mifi and meso if the woman prefers this, but then explain that it takes a longer time taking first meso dose to complete the abortion. Now, the medical abortion after 23 plus 6 weeks for women who are having a medical abortion between 24 and 25 weeks of gestation, consider Mifi 200 milligrams plus then give meso 400 micrograms, right? And then every 3 hourly, you may just continue this until the patient delivers. And now from 25 to 28 weeks, give 200 milligrams of Mifi, then 200 micrograms of meso every 4 hourly until delivery. So remember, now as the gestational age is increasing, the dose of meso is reducing. right? As well as the duration of giving the second dose is also increasing so as to reduce the chances of uterine rupture, because which can happen with meso. So remember that, and that is how you may just remember that at 24 to 20, 25 to 28 weeks, it is 20 every 4 hourly 200 micrograms of meso. After 28 weeks, it is 200 MeFi, then 100 micro meso every 6 hourly until delivery. Okay. After 28 weeks, 200 milligrams of oral MeFi, then 100 micrograms of meso, either buccal, vaginal, sublingual, every 6 hours. Okay. Now, uterus is more sensitive to meso as the pregnancy advances. So there is uterine rupture risk, uterine, if there is specifically, if there is a uterine scar, right? So remember that you need to remember this before going for excessive doses of meso. Now, cervical priming before surgical abortion. Now, it decreases the risk of RPOC and makes the dilatation easy before going for surgical abortion. If you do a cervical priming, it makes the dilatation easy. It decreases the risk of any retained products of conception. Now, whenever it is the gestational age is less than 14 weeks, then 400 micrograms of sublingual meso given 1 hour before is enough for cervical priming. Or 400 micrograms of vaginal meso given 3 hours before. So if you're giving vaginally, you may give 3 hours before. If you're giving sublingual, give just 1 hour before the abortion. If it is between 14 to 16 weeks, just you may use osmotic dilator, mesoprose, 200 milligrams of MeFi, right? If it is between 16 to 19 weeks, you may use dilators, meso, right? And if it is between 19 to 24 weeks, you may use osmotic dilator and MeFi 200 milligrams 1 day prior. Okay, so basically this is just a summary of what all can be used, but just try and remember for less than 14 weeks, because that is more potential to become a question. Now for anesthesia, you may use uh, anesthesia and sedation for surgical abortion. For women who are having surgical abortion, consider local anesthesia alone, conscious sedation with local anesthesia, deep sedation, or general anesthesia. So you may use anything of this to help a woman make an informed choice, discuss all the options, tell all the pros and cons of all the things. Now, but remember, IV propofol and fentanyl, that is IV propofol and a short-acting opioid called as fentanyl, can be used for general anesthesia whenever it is used for surgical abortion. So whenever you're using GA, just give a short acting opioid, okay? Or you may just use the other forms that we have spoken about, intravenous sedation plus local anesthesia, right? Or deep sedation. Now for the follow-up after medical abortion up to and including 10 weeks. For women who have had a medical abortion up to and including 10 weeks with expulsion at home, offer the choice of self-assessment, so they can do the self-assessment including the remote assessment as an alternative to clinical follow-up. So everyone needs to follow up, of course, but if they it has happened at home, they may find out that if there's nothing wrong, they may use it as an alternative. So there's no need of going to the clinic if they don't want to. Provide women with low sensitivity or multi-level urine pregnancy test to exclude an ongoing pregnancy. So they should see that the pregnancy is not there. Now about the contraception, remember the contraceptive options like DMPA, implant, uh, IUCDs, oral contraceptives, patches, rings, barrier contraception is available for women on the same day as their surgical or medical abortion. And it should be present, so because it should be made available at the same time. Later on, uh, the patients may just not take this contraception, right? So the providers need to ensure that the contraceptive implant and that the women who choose this method should be offered on the day of the surgical abortion or on the day they take the MeFi, right? Now, but the provider should ensure that they can provide intrauterine methods of contraception, and that women who choose this method are offered at the same time as that of surgical abortion. So whenever you're putting an IUCD copper T or a Mirena, whatever it is, it should be available on the day of the surgical abortion. Now, remember, many times patients may take DMPA at the time of abortion. So, if DMPA is taken for women who have medical abortion and who choose to take DMPA, intramuscular injection for contraception, consider providing it at the same time when they take MIFI, but explain that the injection at this stage may increase the risk of ongoing pregnancy, although the overall risk is low. Okay, so all these are the important points from the NICE guideline. I hope this session was useful for you. If you liked the video, if it has helped you, please subscribe the channel and please tell me how I can help you if there's anything that you want me to take before your exams are there, and just let me know in the comments.